And thank you for joining me here. I'm Don Ma. Wall Street's main stock indexes closed lower on Tuesday. This is because stronger than expected retail sales data stoked worries interest rates could stay higher for longer. Now, U.S. big bank stocks at the same time dropped on a report that Fitch could downgrade some lenders. S&P 500 lost 51 points or 1.1%. NASDAQ lost 155 points or 1.1% as well. The Dow fell 356 points or 1%. A CNBC report said ratings agency Fitch could downgrade multiple banks, and shares of JPMorgan, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo fell sharply. Meanwhile, U.S. retail sales increased more than expected in July as Americans boosted online purchases and dined out more. This is suggesting the economy continued to expand early in the third quarter and is probably keeping a recession at bay. Lisa Bernhard has more.
American shoppers show no signs of slowing down. It's just the opposite. Retail sales increased more than expected in July. A report from the Commerce Department out Tuesday showed retail sales jumped 0.7% last month. That's higher than the 0.4% forecast by economists polled by Reuters. Online sales were strong, likely thanks to Amazon's popular Prime Day promotion. Consumers splurged on hobbies, sporting goods, and clothing, with grocery and department store sales also getting a boost. And Americans dined out more. Restaurants and bars, the only services category in the report, shot up 1.4% after rising 0.8% in June. Economists view dining out as a key indicator of household finances. On the flip side, sales at auto dealerships fell after rising in June. Receipts at furniture, electronics, and appliance stores also declined. Consumer demand has remained resilient despite the Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate hikes to tame inflation. A tight labor market has kept wage gains strong, while receding inflation has also boosted consumers' purchasing power. With inflation ebbing, most economists believe the Fed is probably done raising interest rates and may steer the economy towards a soft landing rather than the recession that they had been forecasting since last year.
Now, an analyst at Fitch Ratings warned that U.S. banks, this is including JPMorgan Chase, could be downgraded if the agency further cuts its assessment of the operating environment for the industry. This is according to a report from CNBC on Tuesday. Now, in June, Fitch lowered the score of the U.S. banking industry's operating environment to AA- from AA. It cited pressure on the country's credit rating and as well as gaps in regulatory framework and uncertainty about the future trajectory of interest rate hikes. Another one-notch downgrade to A+ from AA- would mean it would force Fitch to reevaluate ratings on each of the more than 70 U.S. banks it covers. This is according to analyst Chris Wolfe, who told CNBC earlier today. Now, earlier this month, lenders were rocked after ratings agency Moody's downgraded 10 mid-sized U.S. banks, and it warned it may cut ratings of several others. In other news, Tesla on Monday said it's going to cut prices in China for its Model Y long-range and performance versions starting on August 14th. Sending its shares lower on concern of further pressure on its profit margins. Alice Rizzo has more.
Tesla has cut prices in China for its Model Y long-range and performance versions. Monday's announcement sent shares lower on concern of further pressure on its profit margins. The electric car company reduced the starting prices of both models by $1,934. Starting price for the Model Y long range dropped 4.5%, while the Model Y performance is now down 3.8%. At the same time, Tesla also said it would offer insurance subsidies in China. Buyers of the entry-level versions of the Model 3 inventory vehicle will get approximately $1,101 between August 14th and September 30th. Tesla's latest price cuts follow similar actions last month. That came despite a pledge made along with several other companies in China to avoid abnormal pricing. Tesla CEO Elon Musk recently said further price cuts were a possibility. The automaker has slashed prices several times in the US, China, and other markets since late last year. It's part of an effort to shield itself against competition and economic uncertainty.
And now it seems like more Americans are turning their backs on broadcast and cable TV. For the first time ever, combined broadcast and cable made up less than 50% of all TV viewing. That's according to the July Nielsen ratings. Now, breaking it down, broadcast viewership made up just 20%, with cable making up just under a third of the audience. Year over year, that's a drop of 5% and 12% respectively. Meanwhile, in July, streaming services grew to a record high of nearly 39% of all TV viewing. YouTube is the most popular option, followed by Netflix and Hulu. And it seems like students are cheating with ChatGPT. In one student's essay, a teacher found the text, "I am just an AI language model. I don't have an opinion on that." Yes, the poor kid forgot to delete that part. And teachers are trying to come up with ways to AI-proof their courses. But there may not be a way. NTD's Faye Corder has more.
Cheating is nothing new. But with smart AI programs like ChatGPT, which can write a perfect essay in 3 seconds, cheating is now fast, easy, and free, giving teachers a headache. There are AI tools that can detect ChatGPT's writing, but
they're not capable of finding all the flaws. I know that people on the front lines are kind of tearing their hair out about how persistent the problem is and how much worse it's getting because the tools are just getting better.
Educator Mike Bergen also says the tools are frequently wrong, meaning students who didn't cheat are falsely accused of cheating. There is no foolproof way to detect cheating.
Be really engaged. Close read work. Know your students. Know their writing styles. Know their vocabulary levels. Know how they tell stories. That's the first thing that's going to be a flag. If a teacher reads something and says, "This doesn't sound like my student," it may not be.
Forbes columnist Derek Newton says the most valuable tool is teacher engagement. They should tell students how ChatGPT should and should not be used, and then pay close attention to their work.
I have a teacher friend who teaches high school English, and if a student is a C student, and then the next day they're able to summarize Macbeth perfectly, chances are they are using ChatGPT.
Jeff Hughes is the author of How to Raise Smart Kids with AI. He sees teachers checking students' work by using existing technology. The revisions feature in Microsoft Word.
What they're looking at is turning on revisions. So a student would have to show, this is my first draft, these are the corrections I made, this is the thought process, and that's available right now.
The revisions feature can also tell when something is copied and pasted, so a student can't simply copy and paste a chunk of text from ChatGPT. Faye Corder, NTD News.
And meanwhile, McDonald's has removed a number of mentions of ESG from its website. That's as the environmental, social, and governance framework has recently come under close scrutiny. A new study showed that companies with high ESG scores pollute as much as those with low ratings. An analyst by Bloomberg shows the burger chain's purpose and impact website recently removed several ESG terms. One web page has changed its title from Performance and ESG Reporting to Gold Performance and Reporting. Now, on a separate page, the title used to show ESG approach and progress. But now it displays our approach and progress. And some ESG abbreviations were replaced by the phrase environmental and social issues. When reached by the outlet, McDonald's declined to comment on the changes, but the fast food chain said it remains committed to annual reporting on its progress on social and environmental goals. And Sam Bankman-Fried used money he stole from customers of his FTX cryptocurrency exchange to make more than $100 million in political campaign contributions. This was before the 2022 U.S. midterm elections. And this is according to federal prosecutors on Monday. Here's the report.
U.S. prosecutors say disgraced crypto mogul Sam Bankman-Fried used money he stole from customers of his FTX exchange to make more than $100 million in political donations for the 2022 midterm elections. That's according to an amended indictment on Monday. It said Bankman-Fried directed 2 FTX executives to donate to both Democrats and Republicans, evading finance contribution limits, and he told them to conceal where the money came from. The indictment doesn't name the two people prosecutors say he used as straw donors, but other court papers and Federal Elections Commission data show they are Nishad Singh, FTX's former engineering chief, and Ryan Salem, the former co-CEO of FTX's unit in the Bahamas. Singh pleaded guilty to fraud and campaign finance violations in February. He donated nearly $10 million to Democratic candidates and causes and said in court he knew the money came from FTX customers. FEC data showed Salem gave more than $24 million to Republican candidates and causes in the 2022 election cycle. He hasn't been charged, and in a separate court filing on Monday, prosecutors said Salem's lawyer had told them he would invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination if called to testify. Salem's lawyer did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The superseding indictment against Bankman-Fried said the 31-year-old leveraged this influence in turn to lobby Congress and regulatory agencies to support legislation and regulation he believed would make it easier for FTX to continue to accept customer deposits and grow. Bankman-Fried faces 7 counts of conspiracy and fraud over FTX's collapse in November 2022. He previously pleaded not guilty to stealing billions in customer funds to plug losses at his hedge fund, Alameda Research. He remains in jail after a judge revoked his bail over fears of witness tampering.
Wall Street firm UBS will pay $1.4 billion for selling mortgage-backed securities that blew up during the Great Recession of 2008. The settlement resolves the final case brought by the Department of Justice to investigate the role of Wall Street firms in the 2008 financial crisis. The DOJ filed a civil action against UBS in 2018 alleging the bank defrauded investors and as well as knowingly made false and misleading statements to buyers of residential mortgage-backed securities issued in 2006 and 2007. UBS issued a statement describing the agreement as a settlement of legacy matter. Other Wall Street firms, including Barclays, Deutsche Bank, and Goldman Sachs, were previously hit with even larger fines. Prosecutors say they have levied more than $36 billion in fines for conduct that fueled the 2008 financial crisis. And it looks like help is pouring into Maui from all over the world following last week's deadly fires. And the Better Business Bureau is reminding everyone to do their research before donating to the recovery effort, saying online scammers are ready to take advantage of your generosity. Here's 3 tips to protect your donations from ending up in the wrong hands.
Thank all of you for your donations.
Volunteers stepping up, helping the thousands who lost everything in last week's deadly Maui fires.
We're just trying to help as many people as we can.
The images are heartbreaking, the need is great, and the donations are pouring in from around the world and creating a perfect opportunity for online scammers.
Scammers do take advantage of disaster situations. They take advantage of people's generosity.
The Better Business Bureau is reminding you to do your research to make sure your money doesn't end up in the wrong hands. Here are 3 tips to make sure your money reaches those who need it the most. 1, take extra steps to make sure the charity or organization is legit.
Be wary of any kind of emotional appeal that is demanding that you give right away. Reputable charities will always give you time to do your homework.
Nonprofits like Maui Mutual Aid are getting donations from all over the world, while charities on other islands like Oahu's Aloha First are teaming with partners like AWS Disaster Response to bring necessities directly to the victims.
We have peanut butter.
Which brings us to tip 2. Go with organizations already on the ground, especially because many roads are closed and transportation to the island is limited. Go with a group already there doing disaster relief.
How are you going to get the items to the disaster zone? So it's really important to make sure that that charity has a presence in Hawaii. They're able to get there easily.
And 3, beware of red flags. Anything from requests for your personal information like social security number to unusual payment methods like gift cards.
And Amazon said on Tuesday its online pharmacy will automatically apply manufacturer-sponsored coupons to more than 15 insulin and diabetes medicines to help patients access discounts pledged by the drug industry. With the new program, patients using Amazon Pharmacy will no longer have to search for and manually enter coupons from the 3 largest insulin makers. That's including Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly, and Sanofi. The program could lower the cost of their insulin to as little as $35 for a month's supply. Amazon has worked to lure customers away from more established pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens since launching its healthcare business in late 2020. It's announcing this month that it has doubled its active pharmacy users over the past year. And faced with record unemployment, millions of young people in China are becoming live streaming hosts, promoting everything from makeup to home appliances to shoppers online. Flora Bradley-Waston has more.
Yang Jingyu spends more than 6 hours a day talking almost non-stop into a camera. The 28-year-old is one of millions of young Chinese people who, faced with record youth unemployment, are attempting to forge a career as a live stream sales host.
喜欢表现，喜欢镜头，然后喜欢表达，然后希望每天都能够出现在镜头之下。
They use platforms such as Alibaba's Taobao to promote products online, from makeup to home appliances and even toilet paper, transforming the traditional shopping experience. Only a few months into the job, Yang had already clocked hundreds of hours of broadcasting time.
所以我之前也是模特，也是博主，所以我就后来觉得，可能主播这个工作能够更加的直观，而且通过每一场的数据，你能够反映自己的一个能力和反馈，然后会有很多直播间的评论和互动，然后综合下来这些因素都是我喜欢的，所以就选择了这个职业。
With China's youth unemployment hitting 21% in June, it's no wonder more people are turning to the sector. The live streaming industry employed 1.2 million hosts as of 2020, according to iResearch, and a pandemic-era boom in live stream sales helped the industry to generate $480 billion in business in China last year. Agencies are now springing up to train young hosts and connect suitable anchors with brands. Jiang herself works with Shanghai-based agency Remomo, an arm of brand partner Buy Quickly. Xinning Li is vice president of the agency.
尤其对于我们服务的国际市场品牌，我们其实反而是更关注日销，对，因为我们基本上还是保持我们的正价策略，所以在日销的工作中，我们可能除了头部以外，也会对于中腰部的达人可能一些合作。那整体上来讲，因为现在的市场达人是逐步的，每一个细分市场都有自己足够丰满的达人内容生产者再去供给这个市场，所以我们的选择也变得更加的丰富。
Initially, the focus of live streaming was on promoting massive sales via big discounts. Now it's more about storytelling and longer-term consumer engagement. Livestream host Shi Jianing, seen here promoting T-shirts for Hugo Boss, says her focus is on building a following and developing a bond with consumers.
并不是那种很简单的说我是卖东西的。 他是买东西的这么简单，因为其实毕竟咱们隔着屏幕是没有办法像咱们现在这样去面对面沟通的。它其实建立信任不是那么的容易，但是只要你能够很好的跟消费者去通过交流也好，或者你个人的一些亲和力等等也好，去变成了朋友之间的这种关系，他就会对你建立一个信任，然后就会去更加促进你们之间想要进行这个销售的一个关系的达成。
Now turning to prices at the pump. What are some factors that could push gas prices up even further? Or could they fall by Labor Day weekend? And as well as how can you save on gas? And now here with me is Patrick DeHaan, Head of Petroleum Analysis at GasBuddy. So Patrick, national average $3.86 right now, Washington State at $5 a gallon. I'm wondering, is there still headroom for prices to rise or have we peaked now?
Well, there certainly is the possibility that we could continue to go even higher than this. We are coming into the peak of hurricane season, which really starts in mid to late August and lasts for about 3 to 4 weeks. So if we see any major hurricane, especially one that enters the Gulf of Mexico, that's where half of the nation's total refining capacity is. And if a hurricane should threaten that infrastructure, we certainly could see the national average going up beyond the $4 a gallon mark. But that's a big what if. I think we have avoid a major hurricane. We should see prices taper off, especially now that gasoline demand is starting to fall as schools reopen nationwide.
So I want to know, going into the Labor Day weekend, how are prices going to look like?
I think that gas prices will likely inch a little bit lower by Labor Day. Probably not much. The national average maybe between 375 to 385 a gallon. So not a huge departure from where we are today. But it's going to be abnormal, that is, for gas prices that are higher closing the summer driving season this year compared to the normal year, which features typically gas prices declining going into the closing innings of summer.
So, in your opinion, what has been the biggest factor influencing prices here at the pump in the U.S.?
Well, a lot of what we've seen with gas prices suddenly rising has been really two major issues that have arisen. First and foremost, Saudi Arabia cutting oil production, which it announced in June. Starting in July, it has now extended those cuts into both August and September. That's been pushing up the price of oil, as is Russia now joining in on those production cuts. In addition, the heat wave that the United States saw several weeks ago caused unexpected outages at some of those large refineries down in Texas and Louisiana. That contributed to the big surge in gas prices as well.
So refineries are struggling a little bit, would you say, in extreme heat?
Absolutely, without a doubt, especially those in the most extreme heat deep in Texas and Louisiana. Last couple of weeks, temperatures in excess of 110 degrees. Not only does that stifle the ability for refineries to use all that capacity due to thermal expansion, but refineries are outdoors, exposed to the elements. Sensitive electronics do not do well in extremely warm weather either. So a lot of issues are going on at those refineries.
So you mentioned oil cuts. What do you think is a bigger factor, domestic demand or oil supply on a global scale?
Well, I think it's certainly a delicate balance of both. And for most of the summer, at least the early part of the summer, it was looking like demand was going to be a concern because of a slowdown, a perceived slowdown in the economy. Demand was weak to start the summer driving season. But then suddenly oil prices sprung to life with word that Saudi Arabia was going to cut production and economic data that has now come in a little bit better than expected.
So is U.S. oil production having a downward pressure? I'm wondering this because supposedly U.S. oil production is poised to rise to record levels. What do you think there?
Well, certainly, we've seen a nice bounce as oil prices now have gone up. That may give oil companies more interest in raising domestic production. It currently stands just below pre-COVID levels. But the difficulty is that even if the U.S. were to pump, say, 500,000 barrels or more or a record level of crude oil, it's not quite enough to offset those production cuts that both the Saudis and Russians are engaging in. So that's the difficulty, is U.S. production increases are not yet offsetting the production cuts by Saudi Arabia and Russia.
And I'm also wondering, because we mentioned refineries earlier, are we still seeing bottlenecks at refineries?
Well, refining capacity is still about 1 million barrels a day lower than where it was prior to COVID. So refineries are still a kink in the hose, though we have seen some refinery expansions that came online this year. Again, the story is still not enough refining throughput to keep a lid on those gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel prices. So refining capacity is still a challenge across the country.
Okay, just a couple more questions. Long-term wise, perhaps maybe next year, where do you see oil prices trending?
Well, I think there certainly could be more upward pressure going into 2024, especially if the economy continues to improve. If the Federal Reserve starts to taper off of interest rates, that could start to contribute to rising GDP. At the same time, that could also contribute to an American consumer who starts to consume more fossil fuels, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. And the big wild card is, will OPEC, which has projected or planned on production cuts in 2024, stick with those production cuts? It's going to be a very delicate balancing act, but I do think that 2024 may see higher oil prices than what we saw this year.
I see. So I'm here in New York, $3.90 a gallon. Do you have any money-saving tips or even gas-saving tips?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, gas prices are now starting to go above the year-ago levels in about 13 different states. I always would urge motorists to shop around before filling their tank. For any last-minute Labor Day travel as well, motorists that cross state lines would be well advised to make sure they're filling up on the right side of those state lines where prices can vary by 20 to 50 cents a gallon.
Oil prices are quite cyclical. As the economy does better, would you say gas prices, oil prices will follow suit?
Well, unfortunately, it's kind of the adverse. That is, when the economy is strong, generally it means higher gasoline prices, more consumption. And when we see economic weakness or slowdown, it means less demand and lower prices. So unfortunately, it's really tough. Very rarely do we see both a strong economy and low gasoline prices for that reason.
All right. Thank you so much today, Patrick. Pleasure speaking with you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.